Juan Montero and I will be co-sharing the session. I'm with Sanchez and Juan Montero. We have 10 presentations, 5 in each time slot, and we'll be happy to follow or represented in the final program. So first I'll just invite David Borak for the presentation with the co-author, which is Solas Nidrian. So please, David.
Good afternoon. I wish Solas Nidrian could be here because he was the compliance monitor for the project that I'm going to describe in Armenia. He was my deputy team leader, and unfortunately he couldn't join us at this meeting, but hopefully next year. This will be about compliance monitoring, which is one key to enhancing outcomes of environmental impact assessment. There are others. I can't help sometimes being historical and philosophical because I've been in this business so long, but this is coming along a long way. Compliance monitoring has evolved from not really even being part of EIA in the early years to becoming now a recognized part. Just for geographical orientation, those of you who aren't from Europe, even some who are, will realize that Armenia is that area down there in the Caucasus, a small country, only a few hundred kilometers long, population 3 million. It was, thank you. It was the recipient of a grant from Millennium Challenge Corporation, a compact of 5 years, to rehabilitate Soviet-era irrigation infrastructure throughout the country. It was $177 million construction cost for the total project. I won't give you the statistics, but there were hundreds of kilometers of canals, main canals, tertiary canals, gravity systems, also rehabilitation of 17 pumping stations. Mott MacDonald from the UK was the contractor for what was called the Environmental and Social Assessment and Oversight Consultant. Please note the word oversight. That really means, in our terminology, monitoring. First, just a tribute to Sauce. He was my deputy team leader and really was responsible for implementing the compliance monitoring program. Here he is making fun of the team leader's choice of a four-wheel vehicle for snowy conditions in Armenia. I'm not going to say what make it is, but it didn't actually do the business, so we reverted to Ladas after this excursion. I also won't go into all the detail on the systems, but you can see the little colored items show where the locations of one or another of many sub-projects, which was one of the challenges for the project. Now, evolution of EIA methodology. I just wanted to mention again, this is in general, not just for this project. The first 5 bullets here, scoping, baseline inventory of existing conditions, the definition of the proposed project and its alternatives, public consultations, and then of course evaluation of impacts and mitigation measures. These have been present in EIA from the beginning. Later on, SIA was added, resettlement action plan, MRAP, health considerations, gender, and other considerations that come into the picture. So that's since this started off, that came in. The impacts and mitigating measures have been consolidated into environmental management plans under World Bank and ADB guidelines. And finally, the contractor clauses have been added to try to cement the EIA, pardon the pun, but to make sure that what is promised in the EMP is translated into the documents for the construction contractors so that they actually are legally found to carry out those mitigated measures. And finally, this topic of compliance monitoring or oversight, as it's termed in this particular project. The project was conducted under MCC Millennium Challenge Corporation standards, which are adapted from World Bank and ADB and other international and multilateral development bank standards. This is, hope I can use your work your laser pointer here. Yeah. This is a schematic of the process of going from environmental and social data checklists evolve into an EIA or an EMP, and then translating that into the contractual clauses that the construction or contractors or initial operators are responsible for carrying out. That's the procedure. An example over here is where you might find in the checklist that trees and other vegetation may be impacted. That means that the EIA/EMP should include mitigative measures to preserve or to protect trees, restore trees. Of course, you can't stop there. You have to work that into a clause that a contractor will understand. And here it says the contractor shall refrain from destroying trees and will replant and so forth. So that's the sequence, the logical sequence. Compliance monitoring is just to be sure that those mitigations that are promised in the EMP and that are in the contract are being carried out, and that new environmental problems not foreseen in the EIA are properly addressed. Now, this is distinct from the kind of monitoring that other environmental scientists use. They use that term when they're monitoring the ambient conditions in the environment to see what the baseline is, or they want to know if there are going to be changes, whether or not those are due to the project. So that's one kind of monitoring, it's previous definition, but as applied in EIA, it means monitoring of the project construction and operation activities in accord with the environmental management plan and restrictions of the EIA, whatever they may be. The requirements for compliance monitoring, and I'm going to repeat this slide because I think it's important, are that there be properly framed clauses in the construction contracts, that there's a procedure and a schedule for monitoring visits. I'm going to come back to that second point. That there's an adequate national or regional local authority for enforcement. That there's systematic reporting to the appropriate enforcement authorities. You have to have experienced national personnel and budget to carry this out. It's not inexpensive, it's an added cost. There's no getting away from that for either the proponent of the project and or the contractors themselves. And you have to establish good rapport with site engineers, construction contractors, and other site personnel. They have their hands full with all kinds of problems. Yes, environment is another one, and you've got to be understanding of that. How did this work out in our situation in Armenia? This is a situation, well, first of all, we've got the client from MCA, we have MCC, the overseer from Washington, D.C., we have the PIU person who was responsible for getting the plan together, and the poor contractor here, all standing out in minus 20 degrees Celsius weather, being sure that a cement plant is not going to be operated out of accord with these standards. Again, I already said this, that this is a specific context. It is specific monitoring to be sure that what the EMP says will be done is actually done. Okay, in Armenia we had all kinds of problems. This is a before picture. The canals were left in terrible condition either before or after being rehabilitated. Erosion, of course, was a common problem, and every time something was built in the early years, it had to be protected. But after, as we got more experience and we got used to the environmental people coming out, as we did frequently, performance improved, the areas got cleaner, the landscape is impacted as minimally as possible, and actually in some cases it's an enhanced environment that was left behind. So the basic story is that monitoring can be done, EIA can be implemented. Here are a couple other slides. We did other things besides monitor construction impacts. We monitored drainage, water quality, both before and after construction, because there was a possibility that buried toxic materials might be brought up during construction, and toxic waste discharged to receiving waters, including international boundary waters that happen to be between Armenia and other countries. This came up in the middle of the project. It wasn't anticipated in the beginning, but we had a very serious accident, a fatal accident, and another serious accident because the contractors were under pressure. They did not have adequate health and safety training or equipment. And over the course of the 2 or 3 years of implementation, that situation did improve. In the upper left, you see construction workers who aren't wearing helmets and who wouldn't wear helmets even though they had been supplied with them because it was not in the national culture to wear hard hats on construction projects. Then as time went by, we improved that, as you can see in the upper right. And actually, workers in the lower right are even on their lunch break, and they're keeping their hard hats on, and they wanted to keep them on because it was a badge of pride for them at that point. It showed that they were part of a really professional organization. We also had problems with these pumping stations where we discovered hazardous waste, polychlorinated biphenyls, asbestos, and other things, and we had to stop and do a training course with the contractors, get material and procedures in place to safely handle these wastes. So just in review, compliance monitoring is, as I've shown here, I wanted to say repeat one or two points. First of all, schedules for monitoring. I've heard elsewhere in this session, in these sessions here at IAIA, that monitoring is being carried out, but I have to say that in some cases it's not being carried out frequently. Does that mean I have 5 minutes left? That seems like infinity to me, but I'll be done before that. And systematic reporting is very important. I guess, yeah, that's what the thing I wanted to point out is schedules for monitoring is a continuous process. And that's why I said it's expensive. You can't do it every 6 months and expect that you're going to have compliance, because when the cat is away, the mice will play, and lots of things come undone that you thought were all sewed up nice and tight. When you turn your back, if you're the donor, or if you're the contractor or consultant, and go away, all kind of standards loosen. Time schedules are very hard, getting worse for the constructors, and they're under all sorts of pressure to cut corners. So it's a thing that has to be done. Therefore, the schedule and reporting systems are very important to make sure you have those in place so that people are aware that you're coming. We had a combination of scheduled and unscheduled site visits. We let them know, yes, we're coming in a week. Of course, we expected everything to be in good shape when we got there. But they also knew there'd be times when we would show up unannounced, and we found problems and we worked them out. These are pictures of some of the kinds of meetings that were necessary. There's indoor meetings with contractors, between the specialists from Millennium Challenge Corporation, from Millennium Challenge Account Armenia, and the construction contractor. You can see the meetings outdoors looking at the plans. And I was lucky. I had a great team to do this work. I think future sessions with IAIA ought to look at the human resources aspects of conducting environmental assessments, both from the point of view of the personnel working on the EIA, or persons. Let's face it, I mean, this is a large project. I've worked solo on projects too. And the individual and the client, that is the person you're doing the work for, we should be aware that that is a big factor in success. Our people who did the monitoring had done the EIA. This was 4 years of activity. They did the EIA mostly for the first 2 years, and the EMP, and then the last 2 years were construction period, and the same people who did the EIA EMP were involved in the monitoring. So they were intimately familiar with the entire operation. Here they are at the headwaters of one of the main canals. I don't know if you can identify who's the non-Armenian in there, but he's there without as much weight as he's not here anyway. Sometimes, as I say, you just have to sit around the table. This is our environmental team over on the right. That's us underneath the letters. Over here is the client, the gentleman, distinguished-looking gentleman, and the woman to his right. Our client, and here are the unhappy contractors. Thank you for your attention.
Go ahead. Questions?
Thank you, Dave. Is that you? 15 minutes. That means we have time for several or a handful of questions. So who would like to ask one or make a comment, please raise your hands. Yes, please, first one.
I'm Felix Filo from the Inter-American Development Bank in Washington. I just would like to make a comment on the presentation. Another added benefit of supervision monitoring is also to use as a feedback for us to do better EIAs. So I recommend everybody, practitioners of EIAs, that at least once you participate in a monitoring and supervision exercise. So that's a way to check your recommendations, that's a way to improve, adjust your recommendations for the future.
Any comments?
Great. Good comment.
David Jimenez, also from the Inter-American Development Bank. You were saying that the same team that was involved in preparing the EIA and the environmental management plans were the ones with the managing the construction. Don't you see there a conflict of interest because they will be managing the same plans they prepare?
It's a good question. It makes me think, but I think, no, in this case, there's not a conflict of interest. What they're interested in, that staff, first of all, they're just monitoring. They're not managing anything that's going on in the construction field. They're watching. Monitoring means to observe and report. They report back to the authorities back in the home office or in the construction office. They do not go out and tell a contractor, unless there's a real obvious emergency, you have to stop that. And those are usually for health and safety reasons, not for environmental reasons anyway. So they're not managing, they're monitoring. But they are monitoring, in response to your question, they're monitoring their report to see that it's being implemented. So yes, they have an interest in seeing that the environmental management plan is carried out, but they are not on the same side as the contractor. And there's always a clear division. Yes, they want to work with the contractors to get persuasion is better than force, of course, in these cases. And you rarely have an enforcement action on a contractor. They realize when they're not in accord with good environmental practice and so forth. So usually these things can be worked out. But no, there has to be a division between the environmental people on the one hand and the construction and operators on the other. And I think in this case, I don't think there's a problem with collusion. Basically, is what you're saying. Of course, any system like that has problems and can be altered unfavorably. I agree there's a potential there. So it requires some more thought. I think that's a very thoughtful question.
Hello, I'm from European Bathroom Construction Development. In your previous question, you mentioned that this morning that usually an EIA budget is about 1% of the project. How would you assess this monitoring budget? What was it in this case in terms of percentage of the project value, and do you think that was sufficient? And what in your opinion should be an average percentage?
Yes, it would be more than 1% for sure. As I said, I was lucky in this project, and another way I was lucky is that the client realized that the burden of environmental monitoring could not be placed entirely with the environmental team, with the environmental consultant. And that's luck because they had budget. It was in the middle of the project that this determination was made. And, oh, you folks have your hands full doing just the EIA. You haven't got budget, and it wasn't in our terms of reference to do more than just an oversight of not monitoring, field monitoring of this sort. So they built that budget into the contract bid documents. Their rule of thumb seemed to be for this project about 1.5% of the total bid price seemed to be a number that worked out pretty well. It handled most of the small emergencies, cases where you saw erosion potential or disposed, excavated materials that were disposed of improperly, and mishandling of waste and so on. And that usually covered it. So the contractors actually had to pay the cost, basically, of compliance, which is probably a good philosophy. It's a principle we ought to try to establish. I don't know if you can get away with it on any other project.
So we have one more question, and then we'll move.
Diane Buckland from New Zealand. You were talking about the things that can be achieved from compliance monitoring. I've been involved in doing a big monitoring project myself just at the moment, and one of the things that we're monitoring is the developer at the time of application denied that there would be a whole lot of adverse effects that the community felt would happen. And so we've included those in the monitoring program just to see if they do happen or not. So that's another outcome that can come from. It's not just compliance with mitigation conditions.
Thank you. Yeah. It's an evolving process, and it's going to be, everybody's going to have different experiences ranging from 0 to 100 on either side of the scale, plus 100, minus 100, until this all evolves the way the other components in EIA have evolved.
Thank you very much. So our next speaker will be Anna Sadena, and I will ask you to briefly introduce yourself. Excuse me, I didn't ask David to do that, but to be great.
Hello, good afternoon everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Ana Cerdeira. I work at Untitled Chapter since 2000. It's a pleasure to share my experience with you all. The topics that I will talk about are environmental impacts, environmental procedures. Then I will talk about 3 important projects of my enterprise. And for each one, I will talk about environmental impact assessment, mitigation measures, environmental monitoring, residual impacts, and finally, my conclusions. Well, metro is often seen as an environmental friendly solution to urban transport problems. However, construction and operation of that kind of transport infrastructure generates different types of environmental impacts. In construction, we have the most significant direct and negative environmental impacts rather than in operation, but also temporary impacts. That's a time to make a parent with the Asterix cartoon in the works at Via Romana that started some years ago, that long hundreds of years. When we talk about temporary impacts, for those who live there, they are temporary, but they last. So during metro construction, there are several environmental impacts. We are working in urban area. There are temporary occupation of surrounding area, visual intrusion of neighborhoods, effects on air quality, high noise and vibration levels, production of wastewater and waste, interference with traffic and pedestrian movement, impact on the population's quality of life, noise, among others. So, what can we do to prevent this kind of problems? In Metro of Lisbon, we implemented environmental procedures. In the last 10 years, we're gradually implementing environmental procedures, like in project stage. For each new project, environmental impact studies were performed, and when legally required, environmental impact assessment was carried out. At construction stage, environmental follow-up of new projects was implemented to ensure that measures to minimize impacts and environmental monitoring required by environmental impact assessment statements were taken. Environmental requirements were drawn up and included in bills of works of Lisbon Metro projects and contracts, and it was demanded for each one: environmental follow-up programs, environmental officers, environmental follow-up reports, and at the end of each construction For each case, require environmental follow-up plan before work starts, reports, and a final report. Environmental follow-up ensure implementation and compliance with mitigation measures, which were necessary and defined as a function of environmental monitoring. Well, after that, I will show photos because pictures are they worth more than words. This is the first case study. It's about red line. The construction started in 2003. The opening date was in 2009. We are talking about 6 years of construction in the center of Lisbon. It was built two new stations, about 2 kilometers length. The second case is also in the red line, sorry. In this case, 3 stations, 2,300 meters, and the opening date will be in summer of 2002. The third case is the blue line, sorry, I don't know, it's a small project with almost 600 meters, and no one knows the opening date because in Portugal we have in the middle of economic crisis and there is no money to finish it. It's true. These 3 projects were constantly very sensible to its integration in the middle of this urban area and or its proximity to some patrimonial elements. You see, for the first case, we were nearby patrimonial elements, and the second one, the reason for environmental impact assessment was because we were in an urban area densely populated, and the third, we are nearby in a national monument. According to the Portuguese legislation, this project was submitted to a very long demanding procedure, just to assure its approval. In this slide, I summarize the main steps of the environmental impact assessment. I wish you to take attention in the A and B cases. They started with detailed design. And for those cases, we took 6 months until project approval. We had in all the 3 cases public participation. In the third case, the environmental impact assessment started with preliminary studies, and it took almost 3 years for final project approval. In Portugal, we have these 2 options to make environmental impact assessment. Environmental impact assessment statements required for the 3 cases. They demand new solutions on detailed designs, mitigation measures, environmental monitoring, report to National Authority for Environmental Impact Assessment. Well, now I will show some photos to see the kind of mitigation measures that we implemented. In terms of noise, we use specially quiet and enclosed equipment, noise barriers, site equipment far from noise-sensitive areas, enclosed work areas, among the others and others and others. In terms of vibration, we are working in subways, and in engineering in this kind of works is very important. Select demolition and excavation methods not involving impact, that's a very difficult measure to take. Not only with contractors but also with the people, the engineers. Air quality, use washing, measures were taken, material coverage, wastewater treatment systems, sedimentation tanks. 10 years ago we started to make our first experience in works, in construction. pH control system, that's a problem that we have because of the concrete. We have to invent systems adapted to the construction field. Oil remover, soil spill absorption sites on the works, specific areas for hazardous materials and emergency kits. In terms of waste, it's a constant in our works on-site sorting of construction and demolition waste. prepares for hazardous waste, and selection of licenced waste management operators. Tree protection and transplanting trees are common mitigation measures. And in terms of social aspects, we are working in the urban area, and people are our main concern. So it's common to have public service officer, newsletter from population, that's politics that our my enterprise has with a regular measure. In temporary urban signage, it's a constant. In terms of environmental monitoring, in the 3 cases, we monitor the noise, vibration, air quality, wastewater, soils, built heritage, and archaeology. For the 3rd case, the national authority considered that air quality was not relevant. And there are some examples of the monitoring of noise, vibrations, air quality, wastewater, soils, built heritage. In terms of archaeology, initial archaeological assessment was made. Monitoring of non-archaeological excavation works were done. In the first case, there was no artifacts, but in the second ones, we really find important artifacts. In terms of residual impacts that remains after mitigation, there is a similarity between all the 3 cases. Perhaps the B is the worst and the C is not so worst because it's a smaller project. Well, not to take so long, let's focus on the B. For this type of urban project, we have human disturbance that is very difficult to prevent. We have noise, we have problems, vibration problems that are very, very disturbing. Air quality in terms of particles and social aspects, it's very difficult to reduce. In terms of environmental experts, wastewater, we have problems with pH, that will suspend soils and oils, and we have problems with soils and waste. So because we are making excavation, right, in a big amount and big quantity. We have problems in terms of built heritage. In some cases, we have problems with archaeology. In the 3rd case, it was a simple one. Conclusions. With these 3 case studies, it was described the 10 years experience on this kind of work. It was exemplified how environmental follow-up was a crucial tool. This experience has been extremely important and that contributed to identify the effective impacts on construction and look for practical ways to solve or reduce them. It has been a result of a great teamwork. It's the same you said. It's true. This kind of work it's not possible to do in office. We have to be there and we have to work together. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Anna. Please stay there.
I hope I can
Answer any questions or comments. So,
well, I don't understand.
Anna, a fantastic presentation, really, really interesting case study. I think I can tell from the photos that a lot of your team are female team.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes.
But the work is probably all male workers.
No,
do you have a problem with those sort of authority?
Yesterday I was looking in Portuguese news debates that strangely the engineering field is a male field, but when we are talking about environmental engineering, it's dominated by women.
In Portugal.
In Portugal.
But not in Britain.
But in Portugal, I started more than 10 years ago. Women, first they are bem que não são vagas a sério. As they are women, men are complacent. I don't know how to say it. Sometimes it's difficult because they are women. Okay, they care for the environment. I forgot it, educational work. And it's necessary it needs years to make changes.
Thank you for your presentation and show your good work. And you mentioned that you have archaeological money.
Yes.
And as is the case with any underground work, despite the studies that you can make beforehand, sometimes you can find unexpected results.
Yes.
And when you're talking about archaeology, this might mean some stopping of the works, some delays. Did you find any of these cases here in these sections?
Perhaps,
How to dealt?
perhaps 15 years ago, contractors think about it. But in truth and before, as the archaeological works, they are defined in contracts, they have no possibility to run away from that. And I think that both parts learn one each other, because it's true that archaeologists are very fundamentalists. But when they are 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years in a project, they started to, I don't know how to say it, they started to feel part of the team, and they don't know how to explain it. Perhaps they don't see so archaeological, but they see all the aspects of work. I think contractors and archaeologists, they start to learn not so extremely in parts of the project.
Okay. Any other questions? Any more gender issues in construction? It's really funny because in China, workers will not allow women to come inside tunnels during construction. So it would be very hard to supervise a metro by a woman in China. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Anna. So we move to the third presentation, which is by Henry Long and Christine. Who else? Sorry. Felice Chan. So please come here and also, if possible, make a brief introduction of yourselves.
Okay. My name is Henry Lau. We do actually build railway. We are from MTR, building railway in Hong Kong. Okay. I very much agree with Juan saying that building railway in China or in Hong Kong, women might not be allowed to go into the tunnel because it was a culture saying that that will bring bad luck during the construction works. So there was a small history on that. But anyway, sorry. Back to my presentation. So today's presentation is just a kind of like a follow-up session from what I presented last year in Mexico about the high-speed rail project that we are currently building in Hong Kong. Last year I explained a little bit on the EIA and the recommendations, on the mitigations and so on. And this year we actually will be further elaborating on how and on the type of tools that we are actually using to manage the environmental performance during the current construction of our high-speed rail project by the adoption of the Green ICT. The Green ICT representing the information, communications, and technologies. So my team members, Felice Wong, will be also presenting about the project, about the system, on the benefit and the needs of the project. Then I will come back for the technical part about the system. So without further ado, I will pass it to Felice. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Hi everyone, I'm Felice Wong, also from MTR. As Henry said, we're the company in Hong Kong responsible for building railways. So In this presentation, we're going to talk about the system, the Andante system, the benefits of the system. Also, I will cover the Andante mobile apps, the web-based system, and finally we'll go to the conclusions. So, the Andante system, what is it all about? Andante is the abbreviation of Automatic Noise Data Management E-System. Basically, it comprises two parts, namely the web camera system and the sound level measuring system. In the web camera system, we will have the web camera installed near the boundary of the construction site. And for the sound level measuring system, we have an outdoor microphone unit and also a sound level meter, as well as the weather station to get the wind speed data. Data are collected from all these devices and transmitted through a 3G data transmission unit. The data are then uploaded to the internet. We can then retrieve or download the data from the internet into the EMS and electronic environmental management system developed by MTR, and the environmental control station, where we can view the data real time from this control station. And then the data can also be properly stored in the environmental control server. So why do we need to develop such a system? Actually, in Hong Kong, major projects like the railway projects, we need to do an EIA, and we also need to get an approval from the authority. It is not only a requirement or a recommendation of the EIA study that we need to do a noise monitoring. It is also a requirement under the environmental permit. So this system, we have it to do the noise monitoring, and we can better manage the contractor's noise control performance. Also, because we can get the data actually instantaneously, we can provide a quick response to any problems and rectify the situation as soon as possible. Also, with this system for monitoring the noise impact, we can verify the effectiveness of the noise mitigation measures we recommended in the EIA stage. This system can also provide a systematic procedures for monitoring. So who need this system? The project management team overall have the overall in charge of this project who need this. Henry and I, as the environmental team, also needs this system to help us to do the monitoring. Also, the construction team, the corporate relations team, the project liaison team can also get hold of the data quite quickly so that they can provide quick response to the public or any complainants. The environmental monitoring audit, we also need an independent environmental checker. So what we call the IEC. The IEC can also view the data quickly and see, provide comments or recommendations to environmental team if necessary. The Andante is quite innovative because we have used the 3G to transmit the noise monitoring data and video streaming. It has a unique application. Actually, it is the biggest noise monitoring network in Hong Kong. We have successfully applied, as I just mentioned, in the Express Rail Link project, where we have 35 stations covering 26 kilometers of this railway. Recently, in March this year, we are happy to obtain the certificate of merit in Hong Kong ICT Award. We have taken the leading role in the adoption of the ICT EM&A. So this is a clipping from the magazine, which shows we have the Best Green ICT Award. So the benefits of the Andante. With this system, we can minimize the manpower we send to the site for doing the monitoring work. We can also centralize the data management, minimizing the chance of losing any data. We can also have the geographical presentation of this data. And we have also designed with the help of our system developer, we have also have this add-on function called the noise exceedance alert. With this function, once we get the exceedance of noise levels, an automatic alert message will be sent to relevant users, and then we can take immediate actions. This is also a customized data analysis tool. And Dante, this system, can solve can solve many problems. The CCTV or the web camera can verify the site noisy condition versus the noise data. We can also make use of the electronic data management system to do further data analysis and evaluate the site environmental performance. So here comes to the technical part, and over to you, Henry.
Just a very quick one to tell you how innovative the system is. Okay, the system got to be designed in a very simple way in order to let people to use it in a very user-friendly manner. Otherwise, people will just forget about it. I mean, can you do just a quick survey? How many of you are using an iPhone or iPad? So this is just going as good as in Hong Kong. Or I'll say Hong Kong is just follow as good as the world's trend. Okay, so we have developed the system in iPhone apps just to allow people to easily get access to the data and the video images. As here to show you, the iPhone interface. Where actually you see. Those little squares are actually representing different districts, or I say different county elsewhere, right? And it will actually, if you press into it, and then you're able to see the number of monitoring stations and the result getting from different counties or so. And then you will be also getting some instant images from the construction site and so on. So that's the iPhone apps, and also we have developed the normal PC versions tailored for our bosses because they don't use iPhone anyway. So we have to cater for them. So simply, this is just it's slightly more details in terms of the interface. We've got the map, we've got as Felice earlier mentioned, saying that we can retrieve data of historical data and performance compliances easily. So to let you have a feel of the system, so we actually will present you a short video, about the benefit of using the Andante system and the feedback from various users on the use of it. Okay, I hope it will work.
pretty innovative, provides a bird's eye view of the environment and performance, and enables us to get real-time data on environmental, so we can make improvements at site level.
Enable us to develop practical measures in
The main works area is located just next to the ecologically sensitive reactor site. With the FFA CCTV program installed on an iPhone, we are able to monitor the condition of this ecologically sensitive area anytime and everywhere.
This is a very innovative measurement system about your presentation, and I think it will help the other team to monitor the environmental issues very effectively, and we can use it for the monitoring the past, present, and future, and help to do the education measures in order to improve the cycles.
This dynamic system is very useful to explain about it.
Just running for a few more slides, time for a few minutes. I'm glad that the good responses, right? So I don't need to explain more about the function of it. So to conclude about the system. So with the implementation of the system, we are actually entering into a new way of running the EMA program, in a more effective and efficient way. So that we can be actually taking result, and then we can actually get to actually respond to the complainant or stakeholders in a more responsive manner. So then, simply to conclude, so with the system, then we can all go home early to spend time with kids, so we don't need to go to the site very much more just on the site monitoring. So we can have good time with family and so on. So that's why I want to present on behalf of the team together with Felice, and Andy is our system developer. And if you want to have a feel of the system itself, Andy actually will have some demo or so on using the iPad to share with you after the sessions. So thank you very much. And
Thank you, Andy and Felice. I guess we have a few questions. Please, 1, 2, 3.
Wow. Good job from African environmental research in Ghana, and I can tell from just this presentation that you know for system. I guess it monitors noise remotely using 3G.
Yes.
But I think it focuses on noise. What about other air quality parameters? NOxes, the SOXs, carbon monoxide, TSP and PM tempo, for example.
Okay.
And then that's the first. Second question, what is the cost of installing such a system, especially over a very wide distance, very long distance? And then for us, we usually work with mining projects over very big areas. How can this system be effective in monitoring, for example, noise when you have certain mining operations very close to communities or settlements? And because sometimes there are friction between mining company regulators and then consultants. How can this system be effective so we can all go home and have a good time with our families?
Thank you for your questions. Okay, if I can recap. Okay, the monitoring parameters. Yes, I mean at the beginning of, about 2 years before we actually commenced with our high-speed rail project, we consider monitor the other environmental parameters using a remote maintenance system or so on. But everything is working out based on the cost, of course, and also based on the available technologies. Now, To my understanding, I mean, because I'm from the IAIA recommendations in Hong Kong, we have to measure the noise and on the dust TSP, right? The dust, yes, it can be done in a remote manner, but of course, I mean, the cost will be very high, and also the system will be huge for the setting up works. I mean, you just simply need a big shelf to have the monitoring apparatus to be installed. So because Hong Kong is a very active density area, so we just cannot afford to find a place to have such a huge shelter to have that one in, okay, for the dust monitoring. So, but for the SO2 and so on, it is actually not IAIA recommendations that we have to carry out. So I hope I have answered the first questions and a little bit on the second questions about the cost part. I mean, because we have to do the evaluations on the cost and the benefit to the corporations and to the project, and this works out. Doing it in a remote way for the noise monitoring, it is project viable, financial viable. So we were able to have this project go ahead. In terms of having it set up elsewhere, like if right now if we're in Porto here and we want to know a little bit more about the current situations in Hong Kong, yes, I think it can be done. Using iPhone here, we're able to access data anywhere. But of course, I mean, in terms of the maintenance part of the system, I think you might need to consider getting some local agents to do some local maintenance part. So just simple one, maybe because of the local service provider, network provider, that may sometimes may jam the system or may jam the transmission. So that needs to be taken care of by the local agents. But I must emphasize, I mean, the technology itself, it is nothing. Well, I mean, it is not very new because if you are the environmental practitioners, remote noise monitoring is not very new to the market. But actually, the applications on the use on the construction noise monitoring and also the customized products is actually very new in Hong Kong because other project owners may not want to spend the time and the resources for the development of the system. But however, striking the balance between the cost and the time and so on. So we have it, implemented at last. Yeah.
The last one,
which is sorry,
the mining environment.
Where
you have, how do you store this in the mining environment to monitor noise and air quality parameters?
Sorry, Catherine.
Mining?
Yes, mining.
Mining?
Yes.
Oh, well, I think this system is very flexible. I mean, because we only build railroad. Of course, I mean, it can be the system, the application of the system can be extended to others, like for measuring the vibrations, building settlements, whatever. I mean, for the monitoring of air quality, it can be done. And because simply you just need the hardware at the front end, and then you just need to connect it using the 3G, and simply the data can easily be transmitted using the 3G technology to everywhere. Yeah, so it can be done. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, just two small questions. First, congratulations. This is really very, very impressive.
Thank you.
I'm also an environmental engineer. See, the question is that, for air quality monitoring, I think the continuous emission monitor and remote monitoring is more validated. My question is more about validation of the sites. Because in the construction site may be really a large area, and the sources of noise, maybe certain machines, and so I don't know how you decide to place the noise meters, noise monitors, because construction workers will constantly be moving. So it's not about the source, it's about the receptor. So particularly the noise, the critical level of noise is at the receptor level. And the receptors in this case are constantly moving in a workplace site. So I just want to understand how did you decide to place the noise monitor and how do you validate that result? The second, let me complete it. The second part of my question is, in terms of response system, clearly you will notice that the noise level at a certain point is more than what you desire. But by the time the remote observer reaches or communicates to the construction site, I think either the source or the receptors may have moved. So what is the response system how do the response system reconcile with this monitoring?
Okay, thank you for your questions. Well, I mean, because most of you are, and once again, EM&A expert or specialist, and we all know that, of course, system itself will just only tell you the noise level. But what more about the system, I didn't actually mention it because it is too detailed. But for any exceedances that we have recorded through the system, right? And actually, that part of the noise will be recorded through the system. So whenever there is a noise exceedance trigger and you want to find out exactly the sources, one of the ways is just to play back on the audio that has been recorded, during the exceedance period. Okay, that's one solution. The second solution is, of course, we have saved time in carrying out the site monitoring work, but it doesn't mean that we all can go home and spend time with our family. But more importantly, is that we can actually spend time in a wisely manner, so that our staff will actually can spend more time to go out on site to carry out the site audit, so that they will know exactly where the problem is or when they will be actually anticipating some noisy problems by talking with the contractors in a more frequent way. So I think we are actually shifting time to carry out the monitoring and then spending more time on site to talk to people to look at the issues or to determine the effectiveness of the mitigation measures. I think this is the beauty about using an automatic noise monitoring system. Okay. Second question, or did I mention that?
The response.
Oh, the response. All right, the response. Yeah, because I think I did mention about in the IAIA last year, right? About the EIA, how it works in Hong Kong. We have actually got what we call the environmental monitoring audit manual, right? Actually specifying, we have to deal with responses in a set of procedures way, right? So we just need to follow the manual according to the procedure in the manual, providing investigations, report, and then to respond to the complainant and so on. And then, but however, system will help us to get hold of information in a far more effective manner. Okay, because sometimes we do actually receive complaints that could be project related. Sometimes when during the nighttime hours, when people are driving with the Ferraris, the noise meters, the noise level could be very high. But then we were able to have some evidence improving that could be some site specific issues. So that is how we are actually using the tools for.
Many thanks. Probably we don't have time for additional questions. So thank you again, and now we end the phase. And we move to the last presenter, which is a paper presented by Martin Taylor himself and Faye. So please introduce yourselves.
Okay, this will be another gender balanced presentation. I'm Martin Taylor, environmental consultant, ex-bank staff.
I'm Faye, I'm working in the transport sector at the bank. And to clarify, I did go into some tunnels in China and they did not collapse.
She went in, but I didn't. Okay, so this is a follow-up presentation for those of you who went to Geneva. We presented the theory of this supervision model that we wanted to implement a large roads project in China. And in those days, 2 years ago, we also said that China has really advanced in the good environmental practices in the highway, expressways, 75,000 kilometers of 4-lane expressways in the last 20 years, slower stabilization, connectivity, biodiversity surveys, the concept of green corridor. We talked about that 2 years ago. However, in previous World Bank finance project, the practice of construction, the environmental impacts of the construction, the implementation of the environmental management plans were really lacking. We did a survey to many highway projects, and we found that the EMP implementation was very uneven. It varied from project to project, and even within the same project, from contractor to contractor, that the construction activity itself was doing a lot of damage to the environment, especially water pollution, nuisances to communities. We also found that the contractors were not aware of environment, did not consider the environment important, protection of the streams, the control of noise, the control of dust, and a lot of unfinished business, which is leaving unfinished mitigation measures and leaving the site without restoration of affected areas. Why we did a very short analysis? Well, sometimes the EMPs were poorly designed, or very descriptive, very generic, or the EMP was not included in the bidding documents. And I like the first presentation, or they were not translated into contractual clauses for the contract. We never do that in most projects. And perhaps the most important reason for this lack of good environmental performance of contractors was the lack of an adequate enforcement framework in contracts. The culture was that environment construction was always first, the scheduling first, don't worry one, I will clean up, I will restore. There was no accountability and inadequate supervision during construction. So now comes the female part of the presentation. The Yiba Highway project is one of the last expressway projects financed by the World Bank, and I will let Faye make an introduction to the project.
Next one. I think all of you know where the three-quarters dam is, and this project actually is located where the three-quarters dam is located, and the entire So the entire expressway, 174 kilometers long, actually trespasses the famous three-quarters dam National Geological Park. Therefore, the environmental is very sensitive, and technically it is unprecedented, challenging in China's history. I think it's probably one of the most difficult expressway in the world also. The total length of the bridges is 70 kilometers. There are almost 150 of them, and tunnels is 61 kilometers. So more than 75% of the project actually is either tunnels or bridges. So basically nothing is on the land itself. Therefore, to really curb the environmental and technical challenges, we introduced a new approach for the managing the environmental impacts under this project, and it is the first time in China. So we'll introduce to you more about this. We'll mention the environmental sensitivity of the project. It is in the geological park, and it is the watershed of the three-quarters dam area. And technically, according to the chief engineer of the project, anything that could possibly happen under an expressway project happened under this project. And anything that you could imagine and you could not imagine all happened. And it has geological disaster, acid groundwater, a lot of cultural preservations. We have mapped the soils that would dissolve with water, with rainfalls, and we have the rock that you can put your finger and you can drill a hole with your finger. So once you try to drill the tunnel, the whole mountain shifts. So we have met all these problems, and nevertheless, our engineers and environmentalists are doing an amazing job under the project. So we'll also have disposal problems of the tunnel waste, and we have difficulties with local roads. So just to show you some pictures, so that you can further appreciate of the beauty of the nature and the challenge of the project. This is the valley, and so basically there's no space for the workmanship. There's no space to have the casting yard, the mixing plants, and to build your access road. And I'm putting this picture because it's very similar to the wine region of Portugal. And this is a nice aesthetic design of the bridge. Actually, this is a 4-in-1 bridge. It has a cable, it has a casting plate, it has precast, and it has box cutter. Just to best accommodate the scenery and also best mitigate the environmental impact. Just more pictures of the bridges. Huge. And sorry to destroy the scenery view, but Juan is trying to show that he's working hard to supervise the project. Some more pictures of the viaduct. scheme and also the compliance framework under the project. And this time we brought with results after 3 years actually into construction. Just to recap, there are 4 key players in terms of the environmental supervision scheme. One is the contractors environmental team and construction supervision engineers and the environmental monitoring center and the environmental supervision consultants. One thing to highlight here is you can see from this diagram that our independent environmental supervision actually has the same power as the chief supervision engineer, as opposed to, as Kwan mentioned before, it's only the civil works that matters, and here they have the equivalent power, and so under the project we really empowered the environmental supervision. Just to show you an example, that for every invoice payment the contractor is getting, they have to get a verification or approval from the environmental supervision. And before the acceptance of the subgrade work or pavement work, they have to have the approval of the environmental supervision. So unless the environmental supervision sign off on anything, they will not get paid. So this really works as an economic incentive. So we have under the compliance framework both penalty and incentive system. How the system is working, it has a retention of 0.6% from the contractor's monthly invoices, and it also has 0.4% from the very nice owner, the project owner we have. They put in 0.4% of the matching fund for encouraging the good performance. So these are the financial incentives and how it works. Although the number doesn't seem to be huge, but if you multiply by $2 billion, it's a lot of money. So the penalty system works like this. If it's a minor infringement, the contractor will be given a period of time to remediate the problem and to restore the environment. If it's restored satisfactorily within the time period, then everything would be fine. And if it's not, then we'll involve a third party to restore the environment, and the cost will be deducted from the offending contractor's payment. So they will use that 0.6% of their invoice. And then if it's a major infringement, which means if it's not reversible, then additional financial penalty in addition to that 0.6% of their monthly invoice would be taken out, plus the restoration activities. And in addition to this reward and penalty, we also have a Oscar award that Juan and I we invented under the project. We want to further acknowledge and reward the good performing contractors and environmental supervisions. So we have an annual Green Award and Green Pioneer program, which really worked to encourage people. They compete actively under this program. We also have mandatory training program either before construction and also during construction, and they have also innovative ways of training. They have the cross-site training between the contractors, so they will see the good sides and the bad sides. And because all these contractors are a large engineering firm in China, and they have a huge reputation to carry, so they really care about this cross-site training or visiting. We also have awareness raising and community environmental awareness. So now the question is, how is it working, whether it is working? So one will introduce the impact that we have.
Yes, I mean, in Geneva we presented the model, we implemented the model. As Faye said, it was a good client, so we had so after 3 years of construction, we have the World Bank, the environmental supervision team, the environmental monitoring team, the construction, the contractors have their own environmental team. These are the actors, the 5 actors: the environmental monitor, the environmental supervisor, the environmental specialist for the World Bank, and the owners, the environmental specialist, and the environmental officer of the contractor. So it's really a teamwork, and everybody has stressed in its previous presentation the need for teamwork. I think that I've been working in China for 7 years in highways and expressways, and really the results cannot be more favorable. I mean, the situation, the protection of streams, the retention of sediments in casting yards, the management of construction waste with good retaining walls and good disposal sites, good camps and good sanitation, the separation, the management of all the materials, the control of pollution from tunnels and from casting yards, the management of stability along the roads, the management of drilling fluids from piles from the rivers, the slope protection along heavy slopes and very unstable slopes. I'm going to give you, we were there 2 weeks ago on supervision mission, so these pictures, I asked the supervisor to give me the most common infractions and how they were cleaned up. So they were very self-evident. You see the difference between the bad disposal site and then the contractor will be given a period of time to build the retaining wall and do the cleanup. Also, retaining wall. This thing about protecting streams looks easy, but this is the first time that I see a systematic protection of streams in a highway construction project in China in 7 years. We have obstructed streams, now we have open streams, or tunnel waste is retaining here without any retaining wall, here with retaining walls. Protection of cultivated fields. These are the most common infractions, the supervisors. Untimely protection of open slopes. This one's really very nice one. Trash collection. See the difference. These are all have been infractions that have been managed through the compliance framework. This is very nice. This is a pollution of the stream, and the presence of the supervisors really prevents. Is a good way to prevent damage during construction. The supervisor, I asked the supervisor to give me their favorite pictures. Really, this is a heavy construction site, and you can see that the supervision really ensured the protection of a good stream in this case and in this case. They're very proud of having, even during construction, good protection of the slopes. And the vegetation is already growing and the slopes are protected. So what are the lessons learned? And I think that having an independent environmental team supervising a large infrastructure really raises the visibility of the environment. Before the supervision environment was under the technical supervision, and they were overruled most of the time. Now they have the same power, they are visible. 2, training of contractors, training of supervisors, training of owners' teams. This is probably, training has been like 30% of the activities of the environmental supervision team. The combination of penalties and incentives seems to work really good. The contractors are shooting, striving for this additional payment, this bonus. Like it's 0.4% or 0.6%, doesn't sound much, but when your invoice is $30 million or $60 million, that's a lot of money. So, I say, I can get free money if I just pick up the trash, I'll do it. The technical capacity of inspectors, is not anybody who can be an environmental supervisor. The environmental supervisor have to know their stuff. They have to have credibility with the contractors. Otherwise they will be overwhelmed by these contractors. And I think that the thing we further to that, we have a great client. The client that supported the scheme, has supported the environmental supervision team, has really even created its own environmental team within the administration that oversees the whole thing. Without this political commitment, without this support from the project owners, really, it would have been impossible to implement such a great supervision, environmental supervision. I think this is a lot of lessons learned. The government of China is considering this as a pilot in order to replicate this experience in other large infrastructure projects. Thank you. hard questions, fail.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. Afraid we don't have time for more stuff. Maybe.
Thank you for the presentation. I want to find out from you, if it is not World Bank support program, will the Chinese government do what you are doing, especially the environmental monitoring and to be successful like this?
I think there are maybe probably 2 layers to the answer. One is what the bank is doing is trying to help the government to change their normal way of practice, and so business as usual doesn't work. And so we try to help them to improve or enhance their performance, especially for caring about people, for caring about the environment. And under our other projects in other provinces, we have seen evidence where the governor has seen, okay, the bank's project is very different from what they usually does, and then they would basically issue a document or an order saying that in the future all expressway projects in the province would use the bank's practice or use the bank standard. So that has been seen in other provinces, and we're confident that this would happen in this province also. So we're basically trying to change the performance or change the behavior, one province by one province through our engagement on the project. And the second level is, beyond the project level is the policy level. What we're trying to do is to issue some policy notes or transport sector policies and try to engage the national government so they can change their specification standards and from the national level. So that would go down to local government and would improve the whole nation's behavior.
I have one comment and one question, just to clarify the issue of women not welcome in the mining and underground works. But in many countries in the past, not only women, but also priests. So you see there has something to do with the people using skirts. I don't know. It's also applied to Scottish men. I don't know. But you mentioned that the EPC contracts were done without any taking into consideration the IAIA recommendation requirements or EMP. And this is a very good way to get cost overrun and conflict during constructions. Could you comment just briefly if you, how was this dealt and if you had these issues of cost overrun and conflicts because of the requirements or recommendations that were not taken into account in the EPC contract?
No, I mean, I was referring to previous highway projects. I said that we identified the major problems. Here, in this project, we try to do everything by the book. We have a good environmental management plan. We translated this environmental management plan into clauses for the bidding documents and for the contracts. We put in place the supervision framework and the compliance framework, the penalties and incentive systems. The contractors knew about this. Yes, at the beginning, was it hard? Oh man, you don't change the behavior of a contractor overnight. It took us maybe 1.5 years to really get the contractors to the same level. We have 31 contractors. 1.5 years into the project, I would say 10 contractors were really good. 10 contractors were good, I guess barely minimum, and 10 contractors were still bad. The last vision, I think that we can say that 75% of the contractors are behaving properly. But that's why we have the incentive and the penalty system in place. Have we made a difference? I think so. But the conflict resolution in the field, you need to empower the environmental supervision team. If they don't have power to impose penalties or the power has to be economic. Contractors don't believe in the environment, they believe in money. So if the environmental supervision team is the one who approves your invoice, that guy has power in the field. Okay?
So one last question, please. It's short.
Yes, maybe a comment question from Captain on the back. I would like to add 2 lessons learned also. My job is basically supervision of infrastructure projects in the whole Latin American region. And from my experience, we have noticed that it's not only enough to translate the recommendations of the environmental impact assessment into the contractual process, but to translate again those environmental process into technical environmental specifications, both for the contractor, for the inspectors, and for the supervision. And that eases up a lot the supervision efforts for everybody. And the last thing that I highly recommend is that to put a price for all the environmental action that has to be done by the contractor. Because usually most of the contractors put there, or most of the bidding documents specify that all environmental action should be covered through the indirect costs. And through the indirect costs, all the contractors often try to minimize expenditures in order to have a better profit. But if we have the technical specifications, we really mark and you tell how are they going to be paid and how much for every little thing, believe there's no bad contractor because it's money related, it's easy for the supervision to validate, and easy for the banks to evaluate the completion.
I mean, when we mention environmental clauses, so it's not legalistic clauses. I mean, we're talking about environmental specifications. And for this project, we developed probably what I consider the most complete and comprehensive set of environmental specifications for a highway project in the planet. And we have, for the supervision, also monitoring indicators and checklists for what to check and when. How to put the price of good performance, of activities, that's another challenge. We managed it through the penalty and through the incentive system. Of course, there are other models. We encourage people to, maybe for Calgary, to bring more models for environmental supervision that we can be aware of. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll go to our fifth presentation of the stream. So please welcome Elsa Joan, if you would like to introduce briefly yourself again.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm an environment engineer, like quite a few people here from the University of Alabama. And I'm Director of Postgraduate Studies at the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the University of Strathclyde. And among lots of different things I do, I created the first MSc in Environmental Entrepreneurship in Europe, which is a collaboration of 9 different departments at Strathclyde. And we're teaching students business skills together with environmental skills. It is first in Europe and in Canada. That's me again. So one thing I'm very enthused about is enhancement, and we heard a bit about enhancement throughout the conference, and the notion of positive impact. So I thought I'd share with you some of the thoughts in here. So I believe that environmental assessment should be a proactive agent in positive development and not just a regulatory hurdle. And I think that, and myself and my colleagues, as we'll see in a second, we think that it shouldn't just be, environmental assessment should not just be focused on mitigating negative impacts, but should also be about enhancing positive impacts. And also resilience and use of impact assessments designed that should be ignored. But the question is how we're going to do this in practice. I mean, we might all agree, I hope in a second this is a good idea, but how we do it. Part of the challenges is things I'm going to bring to you today. Now, as I said, I got very excited about this notion in Geneva. And myself and Frank Buckley and Leah Broder, we edited a special issue. The first time ever there's been a special issue dedicated to enhancement with IAPA, and it came out in September last year. And it's specifically just on enhancing positive impacts. And the reason why the three of us got together is we wanted to have lessons also across the board. There's a lot of discussions in the IAIA conference, also found like EIA and SCA and health impact assessment, etc. So like little sort of silos, and we wanted to discuss enhancement across the board. So I came in with the EIA and SCA hat, and Frank came in with obviously the SIA hat, and Lee obviously with the health impact assessment.
And these are the papers that are on special issue. And I'm very happy to say that Anna Maria Steele's and Mary and Barclay's paper got one of the best papers for 2011, and you have a copy of that paper on your course pack, because obviously it's conference pack, because it's obviously one of the award-winning papers. What I have on the table there, which you can pick up at the end, I have the first paper on the special issue that we wrote, and the list of papers of that as well. So, what is the enhancement? And the definition of enhancement we came up with is a deliberate attempt at taking the design and subsequent phases of policy plan towards the project. It's all, we try to make it completely across. It's not just about project, the whole thing, to ensure success of a wider range of direct and indirect benefits that could possibly flow from the project's strategic action. And this could be anything, but when we say benefits, what we mean anything in terms of opportunities for social community development, improved health and well-being, improved biodiversity, restored ecosystems, increased green spaces, improved landscape character, protecting and respecting cultural heritage, all that. And we mean also deliberately increasing those potential benefits already intended as part of the rationale for the project or strategic action, but also in terms of broadening the range of benefits to include beneficiaries not previously considered. So really, really broad. But how does it all link up with mitigation? So the way we see, obviously, is mitigation has to happen. We're not saying enhancement will happen instead of mitigation. Obviously, we need to reduce negative impacts. But in addition, here's an opportunity that we might make something as extra. So obviously, we'll have mitigation there, and we'll have the three sort of big areas: social, health, economic, environmental. And obviously, we then need to mitigate negative economic impacts, mitigate negative social and health impacts, and to mitigate issues to do with landscape and protecting. But in addition to that, is there opportunities to benefit the local communities, opportunities in terms of local procurement, etc., opportunities for creation of new habitats, so that in addition to mitigation, can we then think about enhancement? Okay, those little arrows there is to show obviously that things relate. So something that is health can also obviously have impact on the environment, and vice versa. Okay, so we all know the mitigation hierarchy, and that's already I've seen quite a few slides at a conference. And originally from 1997 from Mitchell, but it's been adapted. And there's a pecking order to this mitigation hierarchy in the sense that the first thing you do is to avoid, and if you can't avoid, you reduce it. If you can't reduce, you repair it. If you can't repair, you compensate. And if you're compensating, then obviously compensate in kind first, and then only if you can compensate in kind, you compensate by other means. So that's sort of like an order to it in terms of the mitigation hierarchy. Sometimes enhancement comes as a sort of last thing, and I saw it in the slide to do with if you were there for the ecosystem services, enhancement came up as like the last step on this. And we want to take enhancement out of there, but in a parallel system to mitigations, rather than an afterthought after all this. It's something on the side that goes on together. We want also to emphasize that compensation is not enhancement. Because obviously when you're compensating, you don't actually eliminate the original adverse effect. So you're merely trying to offset. And we don't want to see enhancement as compensation. And also interesting, and the offsetting might not always work. When you're thinking of offsetting in terms of ecology, we might say, okay, well, we're knocking this tree down, but that's okay because we can replant this another tree elsewhere. But in terms of social impacts, this sometimes, of course, doesn't work, because you can't just say, well, this person here is going to have health problems, but that's okay, because this other person here, we're going to give them extra stuff. So that's just, in terms of human rights, it doesn't quite make sense. So offsetting might work in biodiversity, but it might not work in social impacts. So we thought it'd be quite fun to have an enhancement hierarchy. Of course, hierarchy here is in inverted commas, because there's a pecking order. While the mitigation one has a pecking order, which you go one after the other. And here it's like actually they can all can happen at the same level. So wouldn't it be nice to have enhancement at the project level? So we can sort of think, how can we make the project better in terms of innovative design? And then can we do enhancement of the local area? So going beyond the actual project, in terms of local infrastructure, in terms of local procurement, in terms of local biodiversity. And can we actually even broaden that and think of a wider area enhancement, considering what we don't have control talk enough about, which is the idea of cumulative positive impacts, such as green networks and biodiversity corridors, okay? So can we sort of projects which both work together? Wait a minute, if I plant my trees here and you plant your trees here, hey, we have a corridor and we can actually have enhancement here working together. So, but what are the challenges? And I see a just four key challenges. One is, I think, is the ability to think positively and be able to communicate positiveness. And how many people in the room are parents? Do you have parents? No, nobody has children. But I think you as parents, if you find yourself with your children, is that when they're behaving nicely, you ignore them. And as soon as they're naughty, it's like, don't do that, don't. And suddenly you become quite conscious and you say no all the time. And if we don't say yes, we don't say, oh, that's nice. Oh, you've done that, that's nice. And then I think as human beings, lots of times we don't think positively. We just pay attention to the negativeness. I think to be able to think positively and to communicate positiveness is our first challenge. And I absolutely love this map. Okay, maybe it's me because I love maps. But this map here shows car ownership. And usually when you show this is just a normal car theft map, we usually show darker areas with a bigger value and lighter areas and a smaller value, yeah? And this is about cars. And usually you show, the darker the colors, the more you have something. But what's interesting in here, yeah, and this map here in that source, what's interesting to see is the darker colors actually show you less cars. Because this map shows you the percentage of non-car owners. And what we're trying to show you here is opportunities in the areas that, in terms of improve accessibility, using modes of transport and less polluting. So instead of showing areas that have more cars, and we have more cars and more air pollution, we sort of reversing the thing and thinking, let's show areas that have less cars, and here's where we have opportunities to do something different. And I absolutely adore this map. I think it's fantastic because it's forcing you to think positively. The other key challenge is, which is sort of the title of the talk, is this idea that do we need a new approach to baseline? Because we sort of say, okay, what's your baseline? What do we have to protect? What's my little babies I have to protect? But is that what we need? If we're thinking of enhancement, it's not just what it's there to protect, but it's what we might want to have there. So it's not, we might need to collect data very differently. If we agree to this, we might need to collect not just what's there, but also what can be there and what we wish to be there. If we want to collect it on what we wish to be there, then we might need to require public participation before data collection in order to determine the aspirations of the public to find out where we can enhance. And this is a completely different approach to impact assessment. Just as an example here, this is my PhD student doing work on I got that. Doing a PhD on green infrastructure. I'm not going into detail on this, but what's interesting on this map is that it shows existing broadleaf woodland habitats, which is the kind of thing we'd be collecting as a baseline study, but then it shows very importantly the opportunity. So the sort of slightly lighter green color, the very similar greens, I'm not telling to change the greens. The very slightly lighter green color, it shows where you don't have trees now, but you could. So that's a slightly different way of collecting data, because obviously you cannot put trees on top of houses, and you cannot put trees if you don't have water, etc. Yeah, so you need to collect it slightly different, and GIS to be able to do. The other key challenge is how can enhancement be measured and monitored, including cumulative positive impacts? And how do we know something is generally or something is enhanced, and how does it affect follow-up? If we're really concerned about enhancement, then we should be doing monitoring. And we should be doing follow-up to check if this happened. But what about if it happens, it takes 30 years to happen? Like, for example, health. We might be doing measures now, but we're only going to see the benefits of it in 30 years' time. So how are we going to do this? And final one is resources. Who pays? And can we afford what might be perceived as the icing on the cake? Although of course that doesn't cost much money, yeah, but still, a perception. And I'm going to finish with a very final challenge, which is to do how impact assessment actually works, which is to do with how we do screening, how we do scoping. So we usually screen out, we think we don't require assessment of projects that are considered to be positive, and we scope out things that are considered to be positive, and therefore they're not significant and we're going to consider about. So actually, the way we do impact assessment, it means that we're actually scoping out the things that might be positive and that therefore we don't deal with it. So how can we actually work with enhancement if we eliminate all these data that they're not considered? So final, I don't have a conclusion slide. Instead of the blue slide, I have this slide instead of the original slide. And this came out, there was a recommendation actually from SCA Prague for the theme that myself and David Antonio were conducting. And I thought actually that the three, this is the one that presented plenary, the three sort of key recommendations. And I thought actually it ties into the kind of things that we've been discussing in the session and the things I've been saying. So that is fundamental to include the schedule of commitments within the policy plan program project, with a clear indication who's responsible for taking those commitment sources. Exactly the kind of thing we've been discussing in a very series of talks just now. And I would suggest that the enhancement we need the same, because if we're saying we want enhancement, then we need to sort of get a commitment from it. We need a new approach to humanity, a new approach to baseline business aspirations, in addition to trends and thresholds, and therefore support enhancement positive impacts, and therefore we need to involve the public to determine those aspirations. And very importantly, and again it's been talked already in the session, that the catchment of impact assessment interest, it's often can be too narrow, and we really must inspire maintenance engineers, construction companies, procurement officials, etc. So it's not just them and us, but we're working together. And again, it has to find the enhancement. You cannot get enhancement without getting people enthused about these ideas. Yeah? So that's my thought for the day.
Thank you, Ilse. We have time for a few questions, or comments, or aspirations.
Thank you very much. My name is IAIA12, original from Uganda, but currently in the University of Manchester. Thank you for the really nice presentation. I just wanted to find from you the concept of enhancement, how it differs from the corporate social responsibility. Thank you.
The from which one?
Corporate social responsibility by companies.
Yes, well, I was starting to bring enhancement as part of the environmental impact assessment process. So it's in terms of like you would do mitigation and sort of thinking, what can we do to modify the project to make this less negative? Is about having like a separate little brain thinking at the same time, wait a minute, here's an opportunity that we can do in terms of changing, something to make it more enhanced. I mean, in the extreme case, for example, if you imagine you're in if you can bring me a mining example, because we're talking about mining. Imagine you're having a mining development in an area that is actually very water poor, okay? And of course, you're going to be thinking all sorts of mitigations to the air pollution and all kind of stuff. But then if you go, I'm building the structure, and this is a water poor region. Can I modify my sort of industrial structure to be like I should capture water? So then I'm building the structure anyway, assuming obviously you've gone through the EI process of getting approval, etc. But if I'm building the structure, can I modify it so actually I can sort of gather whenever it rains, gather water? So it's about sort of thinking slightly in parallel and thinking of something to enhance that is separate from the actual mitigation process.